Well, good morning. So glad that you could join us today. I'm Karen Pearson, one of the pastors here at the Open Door, and you'll see that this is not our typical, usual Sunday morning service, as we actually have a pretty big announcement that we want to share with you today. So I invited our ministry team leaders and our board on to help me share some of this information with you. But before we get to this information and this announcement that we want to make, I just want to bring us up to speed with some of the things that have happened to the Open Door over the last year and a half since this COVID season. I mean, you'll remember that we've been online, we've been in the park. We've actually only been in the multiplex a few Sundays last year and as well as this spring. And along with all the COVID restrictions and the changes, that we've had to make as a church, we've also had some staff and volunteer changes as well. It started with last fall when we had to lay Brenda Lehman off, who is our church office administrator, due to the fact that we were online and the office was shut down. And so it just made sense that there wasn't really a lot for her to do. And so we temporarily have laid Brenda off. And then following that, you'll remember that Pastor Jason has taken a sabbatical. His sabbatical started at the beginning of, I believe, March and went to May. He took a 3-month sabbatical and now he is off indefinitely. And so following Jason's sabbatical, we also had word from Kim Siemens, who is our worship director. She has taken a stress medical leave away from work. Originally, she was going to be away for 2 months, May and June, and we heard at the end of June that she's going to extend it for the entire summer. And so we just really believe that, people need to take the time away that they need to get healed and to get refreshed, body, soul, and spirit. So we thought that this was appropriate for Kim. We're online a lot of the time anyways. And so we wanted to give Kim that time off. Following that, we had a conversation with Alex, who has been on the leadership team. He's also been over the service teams, our AAV and setup director. And I had a conversation with Alex about his commitment for another year. This is something that we always ask our leadership team and ministry team leaders. We ask them for a year commitment. And at the end of the year, then we just check in to see if this is still a good fit. Is this still the right season in their life? And through that, Alex came back and said that actually this is not a good fit for him anymore. And so he has resigned from the leadership team, and he's also resigned from his service teams. And so this brings us up to today and where we are. So just so you know that over the last 5 or 6 months now, the ministry team, the leadership team, and the board have all been meeting together as we've been praying into, the church, praying into the heart of God and what he would have for the Open Door. We've been meeting together to make some of the decisions that we have made regarding our services at the multiplex. And so the last conversation that we had together is we've talked over some of these changes that we've been going through. And we realized that, now that we have very few people still with us as far as ministry team leaders, it makes it really challenging getting back into the multiplex. I mean, without having, a sound, without having a worship leader, without having a setup team, if we were even able to get back in, that would really look very differently for us without having these people, to lead these teams. And so having this conversation, we decided that it would be in our best interest to reach out to Church of the Rock, who is our covering and who's our covering through Lifelinks. Most of you've heard of, Lifelinks. We've been under their covering for several years. Church of the Rock has been in our corner. We've had relationship with them over the years. We've used Aubrey, and even Mark has been out to preach the odd time. They've helped us with leadership pieces. And so we felt like this would be a really good time to reach out to them, let them know, what has transpired over the months and the last year and a half, and to just, really ask if they could assist us in several ways. I know that this isn't the first time that we've reached out. In fact, Margaret, you were telling me a little while ago that before that you were under the leadership of Church of the Rock, you were actually under the leadership of Gateway. And there was a time in years ago that you reached out the same way and you asked Gateway to come along and to provide some support and assistance. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that and share what that experience was like?
Apparently, I wasn't supposed to unmute immediately. Well, for those of you who've been with Open Door, or back then Morris Praise and Worship, for many years, you'll remember we started out really, really small. And in the beginning, we got various speakers from all over the place, different speakers almost every Sunday. kind of our core group was our leadership group. They did the announcements, they did the prayer times, that type of thing, but we always had different speakers, which kind of made it hard to follow a theme. So our leadership team, basically Ed Friesen and Harold, went to, at that time, it was Gateway, and we talked with Ron McLean, Keith Miners, John Micklefield. Those of you who were there way in the beginning will remember we had amazing support and help from them. Peter Todd, Paul Vieira. If you don't remember these days, guess what? You weren't there in the beginning. But we had phenomenal support and help from Gateway. They came to whatever leadership meetings we asked them to, but they gave us autonomy to make our own decisions when we wanted to. And we partnered with them. I didn't go back and look, but probably 5, 6, 7 years. We partnered with them. They gave us amazing support. As we grew in confidence, as we grew with the amount of people we had available, we gradually, in a very friendly way, just drifted to the point where we no longer needed all of that help. To this day, I mean, I think every one of you who ever heard John Mick talk at our church would still say he's got to be one of your absolute favorite people. It's not that there was ever a split. We just slowly drifted on when we finally had the confidence to do that. And when I look at where the church is now, it's basically a brand new start. With the amount of shutdown we've had, the amount of changes we've had, we're starting over. And if you're smart, you know what your strengths are, but you also know what your weaknesses are. And right now, our weakness is we don't have enough leadership, not leadership. We don't have enough feet on the ground people. And so we're asking Church of the Rock to help with that. And they have been amazingly, wonderfully gracious in the way that they're offering help. I can't say enough positive things of the way they're coming alongside us. So I'm very, very excited at the way they're going to help us grow and explode in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear that. I didn't realize that you were connected with Gateway that long. So that makes total sense. And, just before I unpack a little bit of the help that Church of the Rock has offered to us, I do want to say that we actually put some options together. When we reached out to them, we were actually just saying, these are some of the things that we could do. Because God is like that. He gives us options. And together as, a team, when we discussed this, we found that there are actually several options. Now, some of them were better than others, and some of them maybe wouldn't, suit for us moving forward, but nevertheless, they were an option. So some of the things that we talked about is the possibility of even looking for an intern. Church of the Rock has their MP3s, and they have interns that come out of there, young people that are, looking for ministry opportunities. I know, and as a matter of fact, I interned at Church of the Rock when I was doing my master's degree and was looking for that opportunity. And so we thought that could be an option for us, right? Having someone who really wanted the ministry experience and had the time to be able to give to the things that we would train them in. So that was one option. Another option would be, maybe hiring an experienced sound person, and it could be a contract where we could hire them. It'd be a start and end time, because the sound and the setup is huge pieces to being in the multiplex. You guys will remember back in March when we first came back on the first service, and we brought an update then. And one of the things we talked about wasn't just the finances, it was also about the people resources that we really needed, at that time to stay in the multiplex. And so we're in a worse situation than where we're now, because at least we did have someone that was leading the teams and could help with the recruiting. But now that we don't have someone in that place, we really do need somebody to step into that. And so we thought, well, maybe we could just hire someone, who's really gifted with sound, and then they could help train a team moving forward. So that was another option. And then we also thought that maybe we could, maybe contract an assistant pastor, just again on contract to say, okay, you've got the experience, so we would just hire you for the next 6 months, help us build up our teams. So those are three. I think we had maybe 4 or 5 other options that we talked about. And so at the end of our meeting, we decided, well, why don't we just send an email to Church of the Rock, let them know some of the things we're thinking about, let them know where we're at as far as our volunteer teams go, and then just see what they have to say. And as Margaret mentioned, they just came back and they just said, you know what, you guys, we want to do even better than that. We want to come alongside you, and we want to just really serve you in the next few years, whatever that looks like and whatever you need. And so I want to just unpack that right now to you, what that means. One thing, just off the hop right now, what that means is that we're not becoming a campus, okay? I know a lot of you know that they have 3 campuses, but that's not what they're offering us. What they're offering for us to do is to become an affiliate with them. And what that means is that we will actually continue on with our own board, our own ministry, our teams, our own staff will continue on with our own budget, and we will not make any legal changes as far as the Constitution goes, as far as our board. So we will remain autonomous in that realm. We will function similar to the campuses that they do have, although we, like I just mentioned, that we will be an affiliate, meaning that we will utilize their live feed stream on the Sunday morning when we get back into the multiplex. And so instead of us being live, we will pipe in Church of the Rock, and Pastor Mark will be doing most of the preaching like he does with their campuses. But the cool thing is that we will still be able to own some of those other pieces. Or if we run into trouble and need help, for instance, if perhaps there's a Sunday where, the worship team isn't able to be there, or kids church isn't able to be there. Something that I didn't mention to you is that Liz Hoffman actually stepped in place of Destiny while Destiny has been away, but she has given us a 3-month term that she was willing, to do it for those 3 months. Well, that 3 months is up now at the end of June. So I actually haven't had a conversation with Liz to find out what we're doing moving forward, but we do have options now. We can utilize Kids Rock at Church of the Rock, and we can, source their whole kids ministry if we choose to do that. Or we could decide to just keep it with the Open Door Kids Church. We have options. We could also pipe into their worship service on a Sunday morning if we need them to, or we can just do the message part of it. And if we're going to remain online, we are hoping that the restrictions are moving in the right direction, and we're hoping to get into the multiplex, come September. That is what we're planning on doing. That'll be the launch, provided, I just want to mention that we do have 75 people. That kind of is, the number that we've all come up with. If there's only 25, it's still really difficult to do all this work, for a smaller group of people. So we will remain online if we don't reach that 75. But we're planning to reach that 75. We're believing that, the restrictions are going in the right direction. So in person, we will have that live stream, and we will get to decide, how much of this package do we want? Do we want kids church? Do we want worship? Do we want the whole message? In between, we will be doing our own announcements, ministry, that kind of thing. If we end up online in the fall, then what they do for their campuses is they then bring in all the campus pastors, which I will serve as. Mark does the preaching, but then the campus pastor speaks to their own congregation. They do announcements, they do the welcome, they do ministry time, they do all that. And this is all Church of the Rock giving this to us as a gift. So they're going to come alongside, and they're going to help us to set all of this up. We're going to be working with their AV team, their setup guy during the summer with the multiplex, and they're going to hardwire some of this live feed that we will need in order to launch, the services in the fall. The only expectation they have on us, because all of this is unconditional, and they've actually said, let's try it for a couple of years, see how you're doing. Just like you said, Margaret, that maybe it was 6 or 7 years with Gateway, and then when you guys felt like you were on your feet, that then you went off on your own. It's the same kind of setup Church of the Rock is saying. There's no strings attached, and we just want to serve you. We just want to come along, help build up the church again. And then if you guys feel like, hey, we're good, we want to cut ourselves loose at any time, that we can share that with them, and that we will make that transition back to being completely 100% autonomous. But the only expectation is that we will run with their vision, and that we will submit to their leadership, which brings me to the next point. So submitting to their leadership means that, of course, they have the template for all of their campuses and for the South campus there. And so we will run with their vision, which is very similar to ours. We felt like it was a really good fit. Some of the language is a little different, but I mean, they're into family. One of theirs is purpose and relationships and that kind of thing. So how that will play out is, say, for instance, they're doing a campaign with their small groups. So then they would expect that we would do the campaign the same time they would, and then we would promote it. And a lot of the promotion stuff, though, will come from Church of the Rock. That's another piece that they're willing to come on with our communications and be able to handle those pieces. Up until now, I've been doing all that. So that will free us as well as to do some of the other local community things with our congregation, because they're going to take care of a lot of the support pieces that we will need to make a lot of this happen. Now, I know that's not unfamiliar for the Open Door, and you've done other campaigns with Church of the Rock in the past, maybe not the same time frame, but you've done 50 days with them, you've done some of Rick Warren. And so that's a little bit of what it'll look like, to run with some of the campaigns. And so now it brings me to talk a little bit about the leadership team. Most of you know that we have a board, and our board is here with us today. We also have a ministry team, and Margaret is on that, Kim was on that, Alex was on that, as they, ran their teams under the covering of the leadership team. And then the leadership team was pastors and other leaders that have come on over the years. And so now that a lot of the leadership will come from Church of the Rock, we have come up with a new leadership team that will pretty much just, make decisions concerning the local campus, concerning the Open Door, and will help execute some of the plans and some of the things that they are passing down to us. And so this new leadership team is made up of all three teams. So there's, the leadership team, the ministry team, and the board. So on this new leadership team, we will have myself and Margaret and Rennie and Kevin Clace, who is our director over missions. And so this will make up the new leadership team. Again, though, I do want to say that there's not going to be any changes legally. Functionally, we will function as this new leadership team, but according to our constitution and with these other pieces, there will still be a board. There will still be ministry team leaders who will function in their realm with their teams. And now the leadership team will make up a few of us from all these other teams, which, makes total sense because we've been functioning this way for the last 6 months anyways. So it feels like a natural step for us. So, Rennie, I just want to invite you. Is there anything that you would like to clarify, or any pieces that I'm missing, as far as the board goes, as far as how we will function together as a team, or anything like that? Is there something that you would like to just, jump in and talk about?
Sure, you bet. Thanks, Karen. I guess the first thing I would really like to communicate on behalf of the board is that this transition in reaching out to Church of the Rock, it had nothing to do with finances. Our finances are in good shape. And Karen alluded to that, but as far as the finances go, there's no money exchange between the Church of the Rock and us. And Karen said that already, that we're staying separate from the Church of the Rock. So I just wanted that to be clear, is that it wasn't a financial issues that we needed to do this. It was a human resource issue. We just didn't have the capacity and the people to run the ministries at this point. And Karen being alone right now with Jason indefinitely on leave, it was very overwhelming. And this was a way of also getting some support for Karen, to release Karen to do some of more community things, and which is, the barbecue is coming up next Wednesday, which is a community barbecue. And so we felt, we've always been a very community-minded church, and we wanted to be involved with the community. And so we felt as a board and leadership that this was a good transition for us to untie some of Karen's time to do more community-minded pastoral work. So that being said, I wanted that to be clear. And also, secondly, Yeah, so I don't know, Karyn also alluded to it that, so the ministry team leaders would be 4, and now the board, we're gonna have 4 on the board in summary, 4 on the board, 4 in leadership. And Karyn and myself and Debbie and Corey will be on the board, and Karyn and Kevin and Margaret and myself will be on leadership. And so it's easy to remember, 4 and 4. And by all means, reach out to us, reach out to Karyn or myself or whoever is on our teams, and with any questions. And if it's a board question, you're welcome to come to myself. And if it's but whoever you feel comfortable with on those teams, please reach out, because this is a lot of information to take in. Secondly, I just wanted to thank Debbie, has been doing an awesome job with our, she's doing the bookkeeping, the payroll, and the finances. Debbie works with our accountants in Winkler, BDO in Winkler, that's who the Open Door uses. And she's been filing our taxes and when the company's office of Manitoba. And so thank you, Debbie, for doing all that awesome work. And she transitioned from Florence. Florence passed off some of that, a lot of that to her. And now Debbie's taking it over. So thanks, Debbie, for doing that. And we feel things are going really good in that department. Looking at my list here, I think that's about it. Yeah, but by all means, reach out with questions. Come in. We want it to be open. We want it to be transparent and authentic. And whatever questions, just give us a call, text us, or email us, whatever it is. We welcome that. That's it,
Thanks,
Karyn.
Rennie. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. I know sometimes I have a lot of information, and so it's really good for you guys to clarify some of those things. I think communication is super important, and that everyone feels like they are getting the right information, enough information. So having said all that, I just want to give you a bit of a snapshot on what the summer is going to look like. We're going to transition a little bit. It's going to be a soft transition with Church of the Rock over the summer. I mean, a lot of people are so excited to be outside, so excited with the restrictions lifting to be, with people anyway. So we didn't feel like the summer was the right moment to be able to just, hit the floor running with this whole transition. And so we're going to do a bit of a soft launch. And what that's going to look like is we're going to remain online for the summer, unless by some miracle that, we can get back into the multiplex. That's probably not going to happen. So the plan right now is, just so you know, that we will remain online for the summer, with the exception of perhaps hosting a few outdoor events. That's really what we want to do. We've been hearing back from so many people that have said, can we go back to the park? We love it in the park. Well, right now we can't, because it's still only, 25 people. And so when we can get to the place where we can have, the larger group and everybody can come and we can do it safely and we can, heed to the regulations, we're going to have a couple outdoor events, one of them being our church picnic. That's an annual event. I know the Open Door has been done for years, so we're planning that, and perhaps there'll be a few others that will be able to come back and make those announcements to you. In the meantime, Pastor Mark has given us a 4-part series that he has done for their campuses, and it's called Jailbreak. Really talks about what it means now that we're almost post-COVID. And so we're going to be showing some of that 4-part series this summer. And we wanted just the 4 parts because we feel like there are still some other Sundays that we want to, just come on. We have a few speakers that we've already had planned up. I know Margaret's going to be doing a session on garden talk, and I wanted to wrap up my series on, spiritually woke. I have a couple other topics that I wanted to share with that. And so we felt like, the summer would be a really good time to transition with Church of the Rock while still, doing some of the services ourselves. So that's kind of what it's going to be like over the summer. As I mentioned, Chuck from Church of the Rock is going to come out. We're going to hardwire the multiplex and get that running. And then by September, we will be able to, just hit the floor running. I'm not sure if it's a September long weekend will be our launch, or the weekend after that. That'll be up to Church of the Rock and when they launch that. And at that time, we should be in place on what's happening with our worship, what's happening with our kids' church. The summer will give us some time to figure all that out. And so so that pretty much sums up, some of the conversations we've had as teams, some of the conversations we've had with Pastor Mark and Aubrey, and what it's going to look like. They are super excited to come alongside and just to provide some of this assistance. We are super excited. We feel like, wow, this is just a natural next step for us. We had no idea even a month ago that it was going to go this way. I mean, that's how it is sometimes when you're praying, right? You're praying and the Lord doesn't reveal it. And all of a sudden there's the plan. And it's like, of course. And I have to say, all 6 of us felt that way. We all felt like, yes, how could we not, receive their help right now during this time? We're excited for opening. We're excited for seeing you guys. And just before we close this part of the service, I just want to leave it open to anyone here on my team. Is there anything you guys want to say just as we close off this service, or clarify, or any questions that you guys have?
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to say, which Karyn mentioned earlier, but Kevin Clace you're supposed to be seeing Kevin Clace here, but something came up for him and he sent his regrets. So just think of the 6, another picture there of Kevin. And I like looking at Kevin, so there you go.
Yeah,
but Kevin sent his regrets.
Thanks, Rennie. Thank you for that. Okay, well, we're going to transition in just a moment as as excited as we are with what God is doing, we do recognize that this pivoting and this, new change brings some stress. Change does bring stress into our lives. And so I just put something together that I want to share with the rest of you in some ways that we can manage this stress, because there are things that we can do. There are tools that we can, help ourselves with this stress, with change. And we don't have to wait actually to get into September. We can start working through some of these things already. But first of all, I just want to thank my team for coming on today and helping me, just be able to unpack some of this information, fill in some of the blanks, and just being with us today. It was so good seeing you guys. And I want to thank you for being a part of this service. And we're just going to say goodbye to the team. And then I'm going to come back and I'm just going to share, how we can manage the stress through some of the changes that we will be experiencing as a church and personally. And we're going to do that in just a minute. So thanks, guys. Thanks for being with us. Pray you guys have a great week. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Well, thanks for sticking around. That was a lot of information to process, wasn't it? And we do realize, although that we are excited about this launch that we are going to be a part of in the fall, we do understand, though, that with changes, it can produce stress inside of us. And so I thought that it would be important for me to be able to share just a few things with you to help you manage some of the stress that is going to come with change. In fact, you can work through some of what I'm going to share with you over the summer, just as you're processing, thinking about, probably talking with other people, some of what you have heard about today. It's going to create some kind of a stress as you think about letting go of some of the things in the past, some of the things that we did, as an open door family and in the previous season. Some of those things are going to change. Not everything is going to change, but some things will. And so I just want to give you some tools today that will help you as you are processing some of this change. A friend of mine years ago found herself in a devastating situation. And as she was leaning into God, as she was waiting on the Lord, God began to give her this download of some tools that he gave her to help her with the healing process. He gave her some of these tools that helped her to be able to transition in a healthy way. And it was such a blessing in her own life that she actually went on to create a whole ministry around these tools that God gave her. And it's around an acronym of the word SPIRE. And this ministry that she started is actually called My Inspired Journey. And, relates to the inward journey that we are all on. It relates to the soul, the will, the emotions, where transformation takes place. And SPIRE is an acronym for some very specific things. It stands for spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional, all aspects of our inner life, right? And so I want to actually use this acronym Spire today. And I want to become like a coach to us. See, a coach is more about asking questions instead of giving too much information. And I'm just going to lead you through this acronym, SPIRE. And I'm going to become like a coach. I'm going to ask you some questions, which means that you are going to be on this journey of self-discovery as you seek out answers to the questions that I will ask you. And I feel like some of the answers that you are going to get from your self-discovery process is going to help you to be able to manage the stress that you are going to experience with some of the changes that are coming. So here we go. So S stands for spiritual. So then some of the questions you can ask yourself when connecting with your spirit, as you're turning to God, as you're leaning to him, I really encourage you to ask God for his perspective when it comes to these changes. Ask God, say, God, where are you in all of this? Did this new direction surprise him? And does he have a way forward for us? And are we going to be okay? These are super important questions to ask God, because the truth is that if you're not convinced that God is in these changes, then you're going to find yourself resisting some of these changes that are going to happen when we get back into the multiplex. Psalm 62, verse 5 says this. It says, let all that I am wait quietly before God, for my hope is in him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress, I will not be shaken. My victory and honor come from God alone. He is my refuge, a rock where no enemy can reach me. Oh, my people, trust in him at all times. Pour out your heart to him, for God is our refuge. And so the first place that I encourage you to look is with that spiritual connection. Just as our scripture says, pour out your heart to God. Ask your questions of him. Tell him what feels uncomfortable. And then wait and listen for what he would say. What are his answers to the questions? And then write them down. Whatever he shows you, write them down, because you're probably going to need to come back to them in the future when you bump up against some of the triggers that come with change. And when change comes, then stress comes. And as you go back to your answers, they will remain that constant to you, knowing that you prayed about it and then God spoke to you concerning this change. So start with your spirit and press into God and ask him some of these questions. The second one is P, which represents the physical. Let me ask you then, how are you doing physically? Or in other words, how do you manage stress? Do you tend to sabotage your physical health by overeating? Perhaps you're an emotional eater. Do you turn to food or drugs or alcohol or other substances, to numb the stress that you are dealing with? Or maybe you're a worrier and therefore you lose precious sleep as you can't quite, turn off your brain when you lay your head on that pillow. Or perhaps you tune out the world by distracting yourselves with hours of TV or other social platforms. None of these indulgences are healthy ways of dealing with stress. It actually complicates things, as now not only are we dealing with the stress of change, but we're dealing with the stress of poor health, right? And so we need to find ways to deal with it. So then let me ask you, what are some healthy things that you can put into practice, that you can apply to help you to deal with stress? For instance, maybe you can try going for a walk or exercising. I often actually will find as I'm walking or exercising, that my greatest time, my greatest source of inspiration and revelation comes during that time, because as I'm out walking, I'm giving my body something to do. And then my mind seems more clear and I'm able to hear from God. I'm able to receive, that inspiration or that answer that I am waiting on the Lord for. Or perhaps you can try intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting has been gaining traction lately as people are experiencing, tremendous health benefits as they give their bodies a rest from eating. I've been dabbling in intermittent fasting off and on for a while now. And when I do, I instantly notice that I have this increased energy and I have a clear mind. Or maybe you can try some deep breathing exercises, because remember, most of our nutrients actually come from the air that we breathe. You see, a lot of what happens to us is outside of our control. But what we do have control over is our response to the stress that has been brought on by this change. And do you know that they say that people who make healthy choices for their physical bodies tend to be the ones who handle stress better? So then what can you do to get healthy, to help yourself deal with this stress? Start considering God, who is our ultimate authority and who is in control. In Isaiah 41, it says this. It says, don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. The next is I, which represents the intellectual. So then let me ask you, what is going on in your mind right now as you heard these changes? Do you have any questions? Was the information shared in the Zoom call by the team clear to you? Do you need, time to process the information with someone? If so, I really encourage you, either to reach out to myself or reach out to anyone else on our leadership team. You remember we shared that I'm on that team, Rennie's on that team, Margaret and Kevin are all on that team. We just encourage you to reach out and feel free to ask questions or to get clarity. We may not have all the answers, but if we do, we will share those answers with you. Some of the answers may come from us, some of them may come from God. But you know what? We just want you to know that we're happy to be able to process some of the changes with you. We desire to come alongside and to help you with these changes by processing them with you. Proverbs 4 says this. In verse 5, it says, get wisdom and get understanding. Do not forget my words or turn away from them. Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it costs you all you have, get understanding. So asking questions is a good thing, and it's actually encouraged in our scripture that we just read. And getting clarity and understanding is so important, as it will ward off confusion and even fear. Some of your questions may be for us, and some of them will be for the Lord. But in either case, don't be afraid to ask questions or to get clarity. Next is R, and it relates to relational. This is an interesting and crucial area to consider, because most situations in life are relational. There are always other people that are involved in our situations, right? And the changes that are coming to the open door will not only affect our leader teams and our volunteer teams, but everyone who will attend. And our reactions to the change will affect others on our teams and in our circle. So then think about it. Who else in your circle or family or friends or even in the community will be impacted by this change? How will you healthily maintain, your graciousness towards these relationships? How will you honor the Lord as you process these changes? And most importantly, how will you guard your heart and your relationship with the Lord in relation with these changes? 1 Peter 3:8 says this. It says, finally, all of you should be of one mind, sympathize with each other, love each other as brothers and sisters, be tenderhearted, and keep a humble attitude. So then think about how you will process these changes as you communicate with, how you are processing this with your family and your friends and even the community. Because, the way that you relate and communicate to others will influence others as they too are processing these changes. So I just want to remind you to be mindful of that and create positive and encouraging conversations that you will have with people that you are processing this information with. The next is emotional. What are you feeling right now about hearing some of these changes? Are you feeling fear, maybe anxiety, confusion, or maybe even excitement and joy? Because you know what? It's okay. Feelings are not right or wrong. They are simply a human reaction to our circumstances. And like I mentioned, for some of you, these changes are going to be much harder, as maybe perhaps you have a soul tie. So some of the things that we used to do in the multiplex when we conducted our Sunday morning worship services. Others of you are so ready for a change. And so we're going to be processing, we're going to be feeling different things. And for some of you, you might need to recognize that you actually need to grieve over some of the losses, losses of the past. Others will welcome the changes with open arms and will want to celebrate them, and they won't struggle with losses of the past. It's just because we're wired so differently. It's important that whatever you're feeling, that you give yourself permission to grieve or to celebrate, because restraining your emotions or denying them is not helpful. Acknowledging them and sometimes even talking about them to a trusted friend or praying about them can help you to process and make sense of what you are feeling. Philippians 4:6 says this. It says, don't be pulled in different directions or worried about a thing. Be saturated in prayer throughout each day, offering your faith-filled requests before God with overflowing gratitude. Tell him every detail of your life. Then God's wonderful peace that transcends human understanding will guard your heart and mind through Christ Jesus. And so you've heard a lot today. We've given you a lot of information. We've given you a lot to process. And like I mentioned, some of the changes that we are coming into are going to create stress. That's just how it is. And I hope this has been helpful for you as you work through this acronym, as you deal with the spiritual part of who you are, as you ask yourself these questions, and as you connect even with your emotions, that I hope that you will take the time to work through this so that, we can all together personally and collectively make these changes in a healthy way. And you know what? I just want to remind you to reach out, either to myself or someone else on the leadership team if you are struggling with some of the changes that you heard, or perhaps you're not quite sure on some of the points that we shared with you. We invite you to reach out to contact us so that we're able to bring clarity to some of the information that we've shared with you. Well, we're going to be unpacking some of this as the summer goes. We're going to be sharing this this information over and over again, because I know it takes time for us to be able to process that, to us to be able to make the changes. And the only other thing that I want to mention is in regards to men's ministry. They asked me to tell you that they are working on, I think it's going to be some kind of cookout, some kind of chili supper that they are hosting for men's ministry. It's going to be an outdoor event. I don't have a date for you right now, but I'm hoping to be able to come back and share some of those concrete details with you. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I know that there's been a lot that we've unpacked, and I appreciate that you're on this journey with us. Next week, I will be finishing up a series that I started on Spiritually Woke. We'll be talking about, what it means to be spiritually woke then, and I look forward to connecting with you next week online. Until then, God bless and have a great week.